I'm pleased to introduce Megan Bick, who is a BEARR trustee, who is going to chair the first panel session on building resilience for individuals and communities, and who will introduce her panel, and there'll be time at the end of the panel discussion for some Q&A as well before we then have a break. So I will endeavour to hand over this microphone to Megan without kind of cutting it off or breaking anything. There you go. Thank you.
Well, just to repeat Wass's thanks to you all for coming here. Those of you in other countries won't be surprised to know that it's a very wet, rainy day here in London, and still we have turned out. And thank you for all those of us who are joining us online. I'd like to say a special thank you to Dr. Pauline Munro, who has been working with her medical help in this region for longer than I can remember, and so that's a very long time. So the first session, we're going to be looking at what resilience means for us as individuals and for communities. So at the moment, we are all living in a world where communities are becoming more polarized and divisive rhetoric, and quite a lot of difficulties for us all. But this morning, we are all a community of choice. We have all chosen to be here. And I do hope that all of you here in the room and those attending online will get something for themselves, some new ideas, some inspiration, and just the joy of coming together, all of us who are working in the voluntary sector and at this rather difficult time. We do spend a long time looking at who we can have to speak that will be inspiring in such a way, and I think that both panels are looking very interesting. This first panel is really quite nice and varied, people from very different backgrounds professionally, from working in publishing, civil servants, a law background, and yet all working now to be supportive in the voluntary sector. So our first speaker, as you will see, there's a short biography on the back of your agendas, is Sergei Babin, who I haven't met, although I have had quite a bit of correspondence with him. My guess is he went from being one of the least popular people in the town of Kharkiv, where he worked, working for the tax inspectorate, to perhaps one of the most popular now, working to support those in crisis. And so, Sergei, if you are ready, could you now speak for 10 to 15 minutes? Thank you.
Dear colleagues, friends, participants in the conference, thanks for having me and for the opportunity to share our experience. The experience of a team which works in the pre-frontline city of Kharkiv, which has been living for almost 4 years under constant shelling, but we keep our resilience. My name is Sergei Babin. I represent International Bridge NGO, and we prove that even in towns which are under constant shelling, you can create a space of joy and safety. Kharkiv ranks second in terms of area in Ukraine and one of the most vulnerable in terms of shellings. We have a lot of ruins in our city, but even in these circumstances, hundreds of thousands of people remain at home, they work, they raise their children, they help each other. And it is thanks to this mutual assistance that we move forward. Volunteers and volunteer groups uh, have become a kind of oxygen for our residents. We try to help people strengthen their resilience. This is how the idea of our work came about. We started working with the families of the people who stayed on in Kharkiv, and we saw that people who were used to hide in the cellars started having fun, drawing pictures, and so on. They gained hope, and therefore an idea came about to set up a secure city whereby through creativity we would be able to bring back the sense of security and control over our life. We're talking about art therapy. The thing is, the war ruins not just cities, it ruins the internal world of people, and creativity and arts help restore it. When people, especially children, draw pictures and engage in arts, they find a way out for their emotions. So we have several areas of work, modeling with plasticine for children, puppet theater, which increases people's imagination. We also make up stories together, make up fairy tales. Clay is a special therapy. When people touch clay and they mold figurines with clay, people kind of return control over their life, and they create new things. We can see that after these classes, children become more peaceful, more well balanced, and the adults say that it gives us hope. And we came to understand that it's not just children, but also adults who need our assistance because we all live under pressure. So we started holding support groups for adults where we unite art therapy, communication, socializing. People mold clay, they share stories among themselves, and this brings down pressure and promotes community cohesion. This is about solidarity. When people see that their emotions are shared by others, they develop trust, mutual trust, and mutual trust goes a long way for communities. Solidarity is a driving force for us. We are being supported by partners from Ukraine, Europe, and across countries across the world. And this support is not just about resources. This is about feelings, about emotions. This is understanding that our voice is being heard in the world. Children make handicrafts, they draw pictures, and this is a result of global solidarity because solidarity is also therapy for communities. It brings back hope that good should not disappear even in the darkest of times. I would like to thank BEARR Trust and all your trustees and supporters and friends because your assistance is more than just support. On the behalf of all of our teams, we thank you for this support and for trust in us. We see that art therapy changes communities. People go through not just war experiences, but they go through artistic exercises and develop themselves. Creativity has become a way of community support. There are three lessons we would like to share. Resilience is a process, not an end state. We have to support it and develop it all the time. And culture and arts is not a luxury. This is a survival technique for us. Social society is about solidarity, and we have to support mutual trust and unite people, rally them around common causes. When we speak about resilience and stamina, we speak about everyday small steps. When people mold jars, for instance, or volunteers bring dyes into the cellar and people start painting. This is about the cohesion of our community. And I do hope that our experience will help us preserve our humanity even in these difficult times. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much, Sergey, for your
У мене щось камера не дуже працює.
Interesting explanation of how you managed to develop resilience in such testing conditions as they have in Kharkiv. If any of you were here at our conference last year, I think we had lots of little pots and that the children had made, which somebody had managed to bring over, and we were able to give to people as it was the children of Kharkiv sending their thanks back to us. So we'll have all the questions at the end to each of you. So we'll move on now to our next interesting speaker, who is Alana Chkadua. If you look at the brief summary of her work to date, I thought one of the most impressive things was that she began volunteering at the age of 14. Now, I've done some human rights trainings in the region, and one of the things I do, which is an interesting question perhaps for you to all ask yourself, what age were you when you were first aware of social injustice or inequality, that you realized that life wasn't fair? And I think it's very impressive to have been aware of this at such a young age and started doing something about it at the age of 14. But that's something for you to ponder on at some stage. But we'll now turn to Lana, who is the chairperson of the Women's Fund for Development in Abkhazia.
Thank you very much. Do you hear me well? Just give me a quick sign so that I can continue. Good. So good morning, or for someone it's already good afternoon, dear colleagues, friends, and partners. As it was already mentioned, I am Lana Chkadua, and I work as a chairperson of Women Fund for Development in Gal region, which is actually close to Georgia. And it's a privilege for me to be here today with you as a young woman, as a community leader, and as someone from the place that knows both the pain and of conflict and the strength of endurance. And when actually people hear about my place, they often think of like politics, borders, history. But when I think of the place I'm working in, I think of people, of faces, names, and their stories. And I think of women who wake up every morning determined to make life just a little bit better for their families, despite the uncertainty that shadows our region. And today I want to talk about resilience not as an abstract concept, but as a living force that actually sustains individuals and communities when everything else seems fragile. And in our work with women in Gal, I have seen resilience in the quietest moments. For instance, when during COVID period, neighbors were sharing food with each other during shortages, when young people still dare to dream about peace and opportunity, though the situation around them is not very positive. And building resilience for me starts with us, with individuals. And for those who live in uncertainty, trauma, or displacement, inner resilience means reclaiming one's agency, to believe that I still have the power over my life. And in our fund, we often begin with small steps, teaching skills, offering psychological support, creating spaces where women can speak freely and not being afraid of judgment. But these small steps are revolutionary in a context where silence has long been a survival mechanism. And I remember one woman we have been working with, and let's call her Sophia. And actually, she was a victim of domestic violence for many, many years. And after she attended our trainings on leadership and business planning, she found strength in herself to tell us about her sad story. And then we offered her psychological support. Afterward, we offered her to become part of the project on community mobilization, where we were creating self-help groups of women in rural areas. And eventually, we also offered them small grant support. And she was one of the women who actually got support for her startup. She was an English teacher, and she wanted to teach English after school as something extra for those who wanted to develop these skills. And the case of Sophia also showed us that after she was empowered herself, she offered free English classes to kids from vulnerable families or vulnerable background. And it shows that empowering individuals, especially women, means nurturing this kind of inner strength. And when you empower a woman, she gives you in return and gives you back something that she also supports other people who are in more difficult situation from the same community. And resilience is not something just personal. In order for it to be powerful weapon, it has to be collective. And in divided and fragile regions like ours, communities often become the only safety net when formal systems fail. And community resilience means where we create spaces where people can cooperate across differences, solve problems together, and rebuild trust. And in Gal, not only in Gal, but also in Eastern Abkhazia, we've learned that community resilience grows when people actually participate, when they are not treated as victims or beneficiaries, but as agents of change. And when you do something not for them, but actually with them. And I also want to share with you one of the examples is in that community mobilization project where we were creating self-help groups. In one of the villages we have been working in, there was a case when the construction company came and wanted to destroy the only park which was available in that place for kids. And it was not like the parks we are used to. It was just a simple and small place, like a garden, where kids would gather and spend together time there. And the women we were working there, they gathered there and asked for like documentation from that construction company, and obviously they could not show any documents because they wanted to destroy that place illegally and build some place for like their business. And then after these women demanded some documents from them, I think they were afraid, so that they could contact some administration, etc., and they just left that place. And this example shows that how active group of women can actually resist injustice that is happening around, and that they can support others who need the support more. And I think supporting resilience means investing in local leadership, especially women's leadership, and it means like long-term engagement of them. It means actually listening to them before acting, because sometimes when we talk about work of NGOs, we do implement projects for our beneficiaries, but sometimes it comes from top down. But when we talk about community resilience, it always has to come from bottom up, because they need to be engaged directly. And I think I would like to finish my speech with a quote from Maya Angelou, who was an American poet and writer, who said that I can't be changed by what happens to me, but I refuse to be reduced by it. Thank you very much for listening.
Well, thank you, Lana, and that is a very interesting quotation to finish on, which we can all think on about, because yes, we are not in control of what happens to us. So thank you very much. That was sort of very interesting. It raised a little question for me. You know, you talked very much about bringing women together, and is it, you know, are there any differences bringing together a mixed group or working with men, but maybe that is something that will come up in the question and answer session, which we have after we have had our third and final speaker for this panel. We're fortunate enough to have Leonora here in the room with us, and so you will all have chance, those of you who are here, to talk to her separately during the breaks, as well as listening to her now. So a very interesting experience to have spent a good deal of time working and setting up a business in Ukraine, and now turning her skills to setting up a new foundation, which she will now talk to us about. And please, can I just reiterate, don't speak too quickly, because we've got simultaneous interpretation going, and just think of them. Thank you. Thank you, Leonora.
Thank you so much, Megan. So I'm going to be talking about my charity Restart Foundation. And I think to start off, to say there's a huge amount of overlap, hearing from Lana, hearing from Sahi. It's all really a story of giving people tools to deal with extraordinary situations, which to me is a large part of resilience. So I was here last year. We're a very new charity, Restart Foundation, founded as a result of the full invasion of Ukraine. We registered in 2023, and I was here last year listening to these amazing stories of working on the ground and helping individuals and helping communities, which of course spreads through society. So it was a very moving experience for me last year, and it's amazing to be here this year speaking about what Restart Foundation's been doing for the 2.5 years we've been working. And resilience is really what we're about at Restart Foundation, because our goal is to bring great mental health to Ukraine and to all the people of Ukraine, and hopefully also be a model to other countries when we do that. And our approach is that almost everyone in Ukraine will need some kind of mental health support, and the mental health of every individual is connected with all of those around them and connected with the whole of society. So all the work we do with every single person is for the benefit of society and for the benefit of the future of Ukraine. And I think someone mentioned that the second panel is talking about looking to the future, but to me, the work of everyone, all the speakers on this panel, is looking to the future. It's making sure that people are having the tools now to live a productive life, which means that they can build a good future and bring their children up into a good future. So to me, it's very, very relevant to the future, all this work. So with this understanding, Restart Foundation, we started the charity on 3 pillars, all looking at resilience. The first one is running a big range of mental health programs for different groups. And the first group we've started with is going into kindergartens and running a program called Safe Space with children, with their parents, and with the staff and teachers of the kindergartens, to create a circle of protection around these children. We're also starting to work with veterans, and we also work with mental health professionals running programs to support them. So the first pillar of our charity is mental health programs. The second is focusing on removing stigma around mental health. And we see this as extremely important. Certainly, once the war will be finished, it's important that people are able to reach out and able to say, I need help. And for that, we need a positive message in society. So we see that as a very strong, important pillar, removing any stigma around mental health. And our third pillar is supporting the mental health professionals. because these are the people who are going to be lifting people out of dark places, who are caring for people. Ukraine will need all the psychologists, all the mental health workers they can possibly find. And that's a huge burden on them. And as a charity, we want to be the people who are playing a part in supporting them, in keeping them in the industry, in giving them professional support, any support they need, making sure that someone is looking after them. So these are the three pillars that we see as key to resilience: running actual mental health programs, removing the stigma around mental health, and supporting mental health workers. So this is our approach as a charity. So to our programs, the main program we run is a program where we go into kindergartens in Kiev, currently in Kiev. We hope to expand. And our program is called Safe Space. And I'd like to share a few of the questions that our lead psychologist said that she got from the parents and from the staff of the kindergarten. So these were some of the things that the parents said they needed help with. Should we talk to our children about the war? And what do you say about the war? Our children have frequent tantrums. They won't let go of me. Is this normal? How do you support a child if their father's gone to the armed forces? Is it normal for a child to refuse to study? How do you talk about the people with artificial limbs who you see more and more on the streets of the city? These are a few questions from parents and a few questions from the staff of the kindergarten, obviously people trained to work with children. Is it normal that children constantly play at war? Is it normal for them to talk about death or wish death on the enemy? What do you do when a child's afraid of loud noises? How do you support families from the occupied territories? How do you organize children in an air raid shelter? And how do you support the children whose parents are defending Ukraine? So the combination of these questions, what's shocking about them is that no one knows how to answer them, if they have answers, because nobody is ready for a situation of a full-scale invasion of your country or of constant daily, weekly, nightly attacks on you. No one has these tools. And so what we try to do with Restart Foundation, we try to give them the tools to deal with this, to be able to answer questions like this that nobody's ready for. So our Safe Space program was co-created by our supervising psychologist, Oksana Zaleska, at the Kiev Mohila Academy in Ukraine. And it was created in 2014 as a result of the invasion of Ukraine, and was used and developed in Eastern Ukraine successfully in kindergartens to help the children there deal with what was happening and prevent long-term trauma. And the main goal of it is preventing long-term trauma in young children. So the program starts off with a psychologist going into the kindergarten and observing how it's working, just the dynamics, the interactions, how the children are behaving. And then the psychologist begins to work with the children first, encourage them to come into a safe psychological space where they can share some feelings. And shortly after that, the psychologist meets with the parents of the children and starts sharing techniques of how to deal with some extreme behaviors, how to answer impossible questions, and what to do to protect their children from the long-term trauma that could stop them living a full life. And the psychologist then starts working with the staff of the kindergarten to help them to understand some extreme behaviors, different behaviors, and how to support the children through it. So in each of these groups, of course, we see challenges with the children. Certainly as the war is ongoing, there's a big range of behavior, often showing unprocessed emotions. So there can be extreme showing off, there can be aggression, there can be sexualized behavior, inappropriate language, or the opposite. There can be reticence, refusal to open up, And on a physical level, sometimes the children are overactive and can't stay still, and sometimes they're lethargic. So in a kindergarten class, you can have a wide range of behaviors that the staff at the kindergarten don't have experience dealing with, and they're all individual. And through the program, as the psychologist creates this safe space for the children, they find that the children are able to express their actual feelings. So they can talk about their fear, their worry for their families, their worry for the country, the confusion of being attacked. And the psychologist helps them find different constructive ways to express their feelings. And at the same time, she's sharing this with the parents so that they know also the same techniques that they can help the children with these actual real feelings they're having. And in the last sessions of the program, the children and the parents brought together and they practiced the techniques together, which is a very joyful session. So what this approach does, it creates a circle of protection around the children so that they're safe expressing their emotions, such as fear when there's an attack, which of course is a natural emotion, and they have positive ways to express them. Their parents understand what's going on, and when they go to school, the staff of the kindergarten understand what's going on and are able to support them. So they have this circle of support. And through this, we're building resilience for the children to grow up, hopefully free from long-term trauma. And it also has a big effect on the parents and the staff. The parents feel that they're better able to cope with their children. They feel a sense of control again, that they can actually help their children. And the kindergarten staff feel newly energized, newly dedicated to their work, and they feel they can have the tools to handle a room full of children all dealing with different situations and with different behaviors. So it really empowers all the people around the children to help them. It's our safe space program. Following this, we're going to start working with veterans on a similar principle. We've developed a program with Bohumolets University, which we'll be launching soon, using a combination of techniques. And work with mental health professionals, also enormously important in resilience. Whenever we run a safe space program or a principle with any mental health program, we involve interns. We bring in young psychologists who need the experience. We get them the training, we get them the supervision. We include this in our reporting so that it's clear the barriers that you need to actually be ready to run programs and the challenges. Extremely important to train people up, get them active, get them working. Excuse me. We run a program which is a type of retreat for mental health professionals, and this is an area which we plan to strongly develop. All kinds of support for psychologists, anyone working in this area, so that they know someone is supporting them. And our goal here is to provide training, supervision, professional guidance, support, all to prevent burnout, keep them from dropping out of the industry. And to finish, I'd comment on a few challenges we've met with in terms of building up resilience. A very sad and real example is from the news this morning, where we have Russia attacks every district of Kiev, sparking fires across Ukrainian capital. Awful news, awful attacks all the time. And the morning after this, people go to school. The staff of the kindergarten have been through this. They go to school and they're being asked to look after people. The parents have been through this. They have to go to work. They're supporting the children, and the children have been through that night, and each come to school, each with big emotions. So this is very much a challenge working and teaching resilience in this environment, because it affects absolutely everybody. There isn't anybody in this situation who is coming in fresh and good and not affected by these attacks. And that's definitely a challenge to running these programs. And another issue I discuss is the general burnout of people. It's been going on for so long. People are so incredibly tired. Parents are incredibly tired. People working with children are incredibly tired. And everybody is in need of support. So this is where our approach to mental health comes in, where the whole country is in need of support. And by working with a group, by helping people in a circle, in a group, we hope to spread that resilience, give those tools. When we finish a safe space program, we leave a psychologist in the kindergarten to continue the work. And with our next program, we continue training more people up. So that's a little about our charity, our programs. As I said at the beginning, I see a huge amount of overlap with Lana's work, with Serhi's work. And I absolutely loved Serhi's phrase about working in Kharkiv, that even under constant bombardment, you can find joy and safety. And I thought that was a very beautiful, very inspiring phrase that we can really, really look to and really work towards, that even in extreme circumstances, we can find joy and safety. And especially if people are given the tools to deal with these extreme circumstances, that's a goal we can look towards, is joy and safety. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Leonora. I mean, that's a very good explanation of the need to create safe space and how you go about that, which we all know for ourselves in everyday life, and the added complexity of doing it in a war type situation. I'm going to use my position as moderator to ask the first question, which I hope that each of our speakers can answer. And that was one that came from Lana's talk about helping people in difficulty to retain their sense of agency, that they can do something for themselves, about empowering individuals, because this is the hopeful way of sustainability for the future, really, that by helping some. So I think Lana's example was this woman who was an English teacher who then, having been given the help that the Women's Fund for Development had given her, she was then able to go on and give lessons and help others, and this sort of chain reaction. So I don't know, Lana, if you have any other examples of something like that, this sort of chain reaction, this cascade that has been from your work. And I would like to ask both Sergei and Leonora if they can just think of examples, please anonymize, but something that is inspiring from your work like that. Maybe Sergei, can we start with you? Or maybe
Я перепрошую, у мене не працює камера чомусь по технічним причинам.
I apologize, my camera is not working for some technical reasons. But I can give you one example. Basically, we have air raid alerts around the clock. But we run pottery master classes. We had a lot of attacks and strikes during the night time. And on Saturdays, we run pottery classes. We don't know how many people will attend, how many children will attend, because we don't have any feedback with them. And we run these classes at 10 o'clock in the morning. And for in the context of Kharkiv, this is pretty early. So we got up and we thought, do we do we need to go there or not? We decided to go there to see how these classes are working out. And we see that a lot of people came to attend with their children, 4 to 5 years old, and they mold things, they make pots, they smile, they socialize among themselves, they talk to their moms, the moms are talking to each other. This is a very, very nice space that we are forming, and this helps people overcome their stresses. And such examples are numerous. By doing so, we support the communities, the families. This is about humanity, mutual support, and social cohesion. And these examples are really very numerous in our city, and this is largely due to your support, with which I'm extremely grateful to you.
Thank you very much. Lana, do you have more you can add to that story, or another example, please?
Sure, now I'm trying to turn off the translation. I can hear myself. Yeah, now that's fine. Thank you. I think when it comes to empowering women and young people, especially, we always have this chain of support. And for instance, in the project where we supported females who wanted to engage in different startups, we always had cases, for instance, when there was a woman who got support in building her own greenhouse, and then she would give a part of the products monthly to lonely elderly people who lived in horrible situations and had lack of food. And then, for instance, we had supported one hairdresser who would give also free haircuts every month to lonely elderly people. So it means that when you empower an individual, especially women who we view really as agents of change and as agents of peace, we see that they, even though the startups they are engaging in, they don't give them lots of funds, but they feel responsibility that when being supported themselves, they need to give something back to the community. And this is what is empowering us back as an organization, because when we see that when we provide women with really tiny support, they feel responsible and they feel powerful to do something back to their society as well. So yeah, there are lots of cases actually like that. Or even, for instance, when we work with young people on developing their leadership skills, what they are doing is, for instance, they are providing us with lists of vulnerable people from their communities so that we can also provide them with support. And there are really many examples like that. But again, what I would like to highlight and underline is that when you work with an individual in order to empower them, then they actually gather as a network of active people who cannot stand injustice and who are willing to do something back for their communities. So yeah, that's it. I'm not sure whether I've answered your question, but
no, I think you have very much. Thank you. That's very good. Leonor, obviously your charity is very new, and I don't know how many. Do you have any early examples along this line?
Well, talking about empowerment, I mean, I'd say connected with mental health. When we work in a kindergarten, there's often a fair amount of people in the kindergarten who are resistant to this. So often among the parents aren't really interested. I don't think they need to come and be part of the process. And certainly by the end of when we've run a program, we've seen some really dramatic behavior changes for the positive in the children, and we've really won over a lot of people to the benefits of mental health support and the importance of it. and the kindergartens are usually very, very keen to keep a psychologist, keep the program running. And we see this as really just spreading the understanding of how important it is, which people tell people, kindergartens share with kindergartens, and more people will come to get the support they need. So that's where we see as empowering.
Yes, thank you, because I think in this country we don't have a sufficient number of mental health professionals to deal with the needs we have here, and so certainly very true of others. And so, you know, the more widely the load can be shared between other people is very important. Have we got any questions here? We've got quite a nice selection. Sorry, can we start with Anna, please? Thank you.
This is a question for Leonora. Okay, thank you. This is a question for Leonora. Okay. My name's Anna Bowles. I'm best described as a volunteer blogger. I travel around Ukraine, especially in the east, finding small grassroots organisations and writing about them and trying to find owners for them. So my question is for Leonora and partly for Sergei, which is that the people you're talking about are based in Kharkiv or Kiev, which already makes them relatively privileged, unfortunately. The children who most need help are probably the children who are coming in from pre-front villages, for example. I know from talking to community centres in Kramatorsk, you will meet kids who are 10 years old and can't read.
Slower, please. For the interpreters. Sorry.
Yes, you will sometimes meet children from pre-front villages who are 10 years old and can't read, for example. Do you know if there is any kind of provision for the sort of work you are doing that helps these kind of children?
Sergei, were you able to hear the question? Okay.
Ну, у нас ми плануємо масштабуватися на
Well, we are
села,
planning
но
to scale up
поки що ні.
and
Але у
include
нас
villages,
дуже
but so
багато,
far
у нас
it's not
прифронтове
happening.
місце. У нас
But
дуже,
our city is a
дуже багато
pre-frontline
переселенців
city,
з міст.
and we have a lot of
Місті
people who are
знаходяться
relocated to
в
Kharkiv,
сільській місцевості. У нас є
and
масова
including those who came
еміграція.
from rural
І ми
areas.
активно працюємо
There are rural
з людьми,
areas from which
з сім'ями, надаємо
people
можливість
were brought in
програм
by
психологічної
way
підтримки,
of obligation. It's not optional for them, it was mandatory. And we work with them as well, but within Kharkiv. Unfortunately, we do not cover the rural areas where I work, but we're planning to scale up in the future if we can.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have really the same answer as Serhii. I mean, in Kiev, of course, there's a lot of children and families from the occupied territories. So in any class we work with, there'll be a range of children and families. We will absolutely be expanding and working with as many as we can, but also coming back to almost everyone in Ukraine needs some support of different kinds. And this, what you're talking about, might be a slightly different program needed. But our plans are absolutely to be working with them.
Okay, thank you very much. We have more questions here in the room, but I'd just like to say to people online, we have one question waiting online, but please, if you feel you have some questions, can you write them in? They will be translated, and then we can ask them. But first, Armour, you had a question, please. Introduce yourself briefly as well.
So I'm Armour Wason, and I'm an advisor to BEARR, your Grand Council. And I'm obviously aware, as you just mentioned, Megan, that there is a massive issue about this insufficient number of mental health professionals, and also how do we do this at scale. And I'm interested in this because I volunteer for a small charity called Bookmark, which trains
The quality of the audio is not good
to
enough for
read
translation.
small children. And what is very striking about this is you go into a school once or twice a week and you spend half an hour with one child. And what I'm very struck by is that it's the relationship that becomes incredibly precious and important for the child. It's, I think, more important than the reading, especially if that child is having difficulties, which generally are the ones who get this support. And you don't need to train the people to the extent that you need to train mental health professionals. So you can have babusia or bidus from the village who actually should do with it, spending half an hour with the child once a week. Just coming and reading, helping the child read, and reading to the child when the child is too tired or too frightened or upset. And it's an amazing distracting force. And I'm very struck that I've watched in my own experience over 3 years how children certainly love and need this one-to-one attention from someone who isn't on the best parents, who has decided to devote their time, who's consistent, comes in whatever the weather. And I just think it might be a very powerful way of scaling up the resource available to small children. I don't know if anyone's used anything like this, so that's my question.
Okay, thank you. And I think that question could equally go to Lana as well as Sergey and Leonora. We've talked about the art therapy and whatever. I know that the group in Zaporizhia do a lot of work in libraries, so it's in and around books and reading. Again, Sergey, could you? Oh, sorry. Okay.
Unfortunately, the quality of that audio was not good enough for translation. I could not take that question because I couldn't make it out.
Okay. Well, thank you.
The
for
microphone.
That.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we'll consider that for the next one. Lana, were you able to hear what Amora said?
To be honest, the voice was a bit cutting, so if you could quickly just tell me, repeat the question again, I would be very thankful.
Amora was talking about an older person sitting with a child and helping them with reading and stuff like that, which is to help their reading skills, but actually the social interaction in and around that was sort of very important. And when there are insufficient mental health professionals, just an ordinary person doing this could happen, you know, in a village, in a town. Do you have any examples?
Actually, we don't have the example of, for instance, elderly people helping kids, but we have another example, for instance, when we actually ask kids to entertain or socialize lonely elderly people, and this really works well. For instance, last week we had an activity where we invited school children to meet with lonely elderly people, and those elderly people were showing youngsters like their photos, pictures, the printed ones from their young ages. And because in our case, we have an issue, not only, for instance, of shortage of food for lonely elderly people or housing issues, but on another hand, they really miss talking to people, because when they live alone, they don't have anyone actually to talk to. And that was the reason we decided to involve young people in this initiative, and it worked really well. And on the other hand, we also had joint intergenerational activities where, for instance, young people and elderly people were watching movies together and then having a discussion afterwards. So this intergenerational approach really works well, and these kind of activities, they play really a therapeutical role for those elderly, lonely people, because they feel that someone is interested in their life, and that there is someone there actually ready to listen to their stories. So this intergenerational approach, we really use it in our work, and it has a very positive feedback from both groups.
Okay, thank you, Lana. I think the BEARR Trust did a conference once on intergenerational.
Так, я зрозумів, про що
Now I understand what we are talking about. Contextualizing this, we also have some individual cases when elderly people bring their grandchildren to master classes while the parents are busy elsewhere. And the children are happy, and the elderly people are happy because they feel useful in this. And it's very useful for the parents as well, because otherwise there would be nobody to bring their children to the activities that they would like to attend. And sometimes we give clay, for instance, to elderly people as well, so that they could mold things together with children, and they interact, they help each other. And sometimes 3 years old children help their grannies and granddads to make things. And this is fun, both for the elderly and for the children. And in the meantime, the parents are happy because their loved ones are busy and happy. So these are the cases that we have as well. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much about the help going different ways from younger to older and older to younger. Leonora, do you have anything to add? Yes.
No, I think it just shows how many different ways there are for bringing communities together and healing communities in simple ways and in more technical ways. And what a great example.
Thank you. I'll take a question which has come in on the chat from Joey Nasowska. When we consider the future needs of the people of Ukraine, there will be a situation when people who are currently outside the country will return. What will be needed to enable people to reintegrate with each other? So this is a different form of community cohesion, isn't it? So that people who remained and people who return can build the future together. So this question is really for our Ukrainian speakers as such. Lana, if you feel you have something to say, please do interject. Sergei, have you any ideas on this very difficult issue?
Ну, я вам хочу відповісти коротко.
Well, my answer will be very brief. If we have peace, everything will work out fine in terms of reintegration and otherwise. The main thing for us is to make sure that we have peace. All the rest will come along. Our communities are very strong and resilient. We cooperate with the authorities, and even now people are coming back to Ukraine. Kharkiv is quite a big city. Previously, you would be traveling around the city and you would see a huge number of cars and people. But now,
sorry,
even
Sergei, I think the internet has dropped out. I'm not sure
in spite of
if
all
at
the
your end or our
difficulties,
end.
we can see that a lot of people have come back to Kharkiv, and people try to help each other.
That's good. Thank you.
A lot of people come back irrespective of anything. Some people do leave Kharkiv, but basically a lot of people are coming back as well. Well, as a matter of fact, the main thing for us now is to bring back peace. As soon as we have peace, all the other things will work out just fine. Reintegration, integration, and otherwise. Even now, a lot of people are coming back to Kharkiv. Some 2 years ago, you would be traveling around the city and you see that the number of cars and people have dwindled. But now, in spite of everything and daily shellings and strikes 24/7, a lot of people are coming back, and there are a lot of governmental programs to support them. And at the local level as well, there are a lot of benefits provided for people who come back. And our communities are quite resilient and helpful. People very often help each other. All these things are in place. And our experience here is tremendous. Even though some people do leave our city, well, actually, everything depends on each individual family. But otherwise, everything's fine. If we have peace, everything else will work out. So we are very much looking forward to peace.
Indeed, indeed. Thank you. Leonora, can you be sure that your microphone is good? Yeah, that's probably better. Thank you.
Again, I agree with Sahi. Once we have peace, everything will work out. I do think that mental health will have a very big role to play in that, because everyone will have very individual experiences of the war years, and in relation to them and their circle, their family, what they've been through, the people who left Ukraine, the people who stayed in Ukraine. And from the point of view of Restart Foundation, we very much hope to be working with lots of groups of adults, and with the main role of giving people tools to really build the lives they want and to take responsibility for that, so that they feel a personal ability and responsibility for building their own future and focusing on themselves with a sense of empowerment. So that would be our focus, and encouraging people to get the support that they might need. So I definitely think that will be a very important part of a successful next step for Ukraine.
Indeed, thank you. And I'm not sure, Olga from Kherson would like to ask a question online. Maybe it's, or to add something to this, I'm not sure.
Вітаю з Херсона.
Greetings from Kherson. First of all, I would like to thank BEARR Trust for your assistance. You were among the first who supported us after the liberation from occupation. Thank you very much indeed, because your support was invaluable. I would like to add to what I've just heard from the city of Kharkiv. Kherson is the only major city of Ukraine which was under occupation. Currently, a large part of our city remains under occupation. A lot of people left the city. Only 10% of the population which we used to have before the February 2022 have remained and stay on in Kherson. For us, peace is a very specific and concrete term. Peace can be assured only if Ukraine is victorious, because we speak just about peace. But if some agreements are signed and as a result our occupied lands will remain under occupation, for us this is not going to be peace. We are only 2 kilometers away from the Russian positions, and if peace is signed on the basis of such documents, we will be suffering from constant shellings, and people will not be willing to come back to Kherson. A lot of people have lost their homes, not just because of strikes or shelling, but because of other factors related to occupation. Therefore, peace can be viewed and considered only through the prism of Ukraine's victory. Otherwise, people will have nowhere to come back to. This is awful. We've been under occupation. We know what it's all about. So please be mindful of this. It's not just peace in and of itself. We need peace only through victory. But once again, I'd like to thank your trust for your assistance. I'm sorry that I joined in later than I was expected to, but there were some problems related to power outages as a result of constant strikes.
Yes. Well, thank you, Olga, that you were able to join us. And as we've seen from the beginning, even where we have electricity and internet supply, we've had our own glitches with technology anyway. So I do apologize for that, and I hope it hasn't spoilt your enjoyment of the first session. I would like to thank all of our speakers for their talks and answering the questions. If you do have more which we haven't managed to ask at this stage, there could be chance in the final roundup, because I do hope that the first speakers will stay and listen to the next panel, which is looking at organisational resilience as well. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Welcome back, everybody, and welcome to everybody who's, I hope, had a coffee break, wherever they are in the world. Right now, we're going to change the perspective, and we're going to look through the other end of the telescope in a way. And we're going to look at how organizations themselves, your organizations, the civil society organizations who are providing all this support in difficult times, how they themselves manage resilience and endurance through crisis. And we're going to have three speakers who are dealing with very different kinds of crisis, in fact. On the one hand, we have war in Ukraine, now coming up to the 12th year. And in certain other countries, we see increasing pressures being placed on civil society by the authorities. And it applies to both situations that nobody quite knows how or when things will get better. So resilience and endurance are crucial. But in the meantime, as we hear from everybody concerned with Ukraine, exhaustion is a factor. And if you don't see the end, it's even harder. The same applies where political repression creeps up. Nobody quite knows when or how it's going to develop and how it's going to affect people. So your organizations, the partners that BEARR has in the region, have staff and have volunteers, have funding issues, and resilience applies not only to how people feel, and I think it was Sergey who, or one of our first speakers mentioned emotion. That's a crucial part of it, but so is funding, so is staffing, and how to support all the people who work with you during these times so that they can keep going. Because everybody, as everybody has said in the first panel, we will continue. But how to continue and conserve your strength, that's what we want to talk about now. And how to plan for a very unclear future, because all NGOs need a strategy for the future. They need plans. And we at BEARR have been endlessly discussing our strategies and plans, as I'm sure everybody does. But when you don't know what lies ahead, that gets even harder. We've heard some wonderful examples this morning of how resilience is demonstrated. Now we'd like to hear about how you build your organizational resilience so that it will endure in the next months and the next years. Ukrainian has a word, razom, meaning together. I think that lies at the center of everything. Together within your organization, together with your beneficiaries and partners, and how building partnerships with others can help you with this resilience. And we are now going to first have our first speaker. Sorry, I have not got a program in front of me. Can I have one? Thank you. Medea Melidze, Executive Director of the Eurasian Women's Network on AIDS in Tbilisi, in Georgia. We're going to get a perspective from Georgia. Welcome, Medea, and over to you.
Hello, everyone. I hope my voice is clear enough. You can hear me well. Thank you for this amazing meeting. It's on time. I really enjoyed listening for the speakers from the first panel. So many topics resonated with the work we do. Yeah, briefly about our organization, as it was mentioned, Eurasian Women's Network on AIDS. We already have 10 years of experience. It was based in Georgia, Tbilisi, at 2015. And back then, there was the time when Georgia as a country was one of the lighthouses of democracy in the region. So it was a very good platform for many national and the regional, even the global NGOs to set up and do the work within the region and beyond in order to bring the improvement for the well-being in terms of social justice. I mean, for the people who are one of the most vulnerable and marginalized based on many grounds. But unfortunately, the situation changes. It changes drastically, it changes really fast in the region and in Georgia specifically. And that's what I wanted to speak about, and maybe some tips that helps us staying resilient in terms of hidden problems that might arise or whenever they become very vivid and very threatening to the work or to the communities we serve. So as I mentioned, it's a community-led organization, it's women-led organization, not only dealing with HIV, but every person who is affected by HIV. So it gives the access to preventive and treatment measures and adherence, but not only. I mean, we try to look at the needs holistically. And one thing we definitely do is like staying resilient in terms of providing mental health supports for our members and for activists within the group. The feminist vision that we bring is also something important to mention. And at the same time, it's, I would say, more about the movement building rather than only holistic and intersectional movement building rather than only concentrated on HIV, so it's one of the basic strategies. Sexual and reproductive health and rights and access to the services for specifically for women living and affected by HIV, one of the big strategic directions. And you already understand that irrespective in which situation the country or the region is, because we covered 14 countries, including South Caucasus, Eastern Europe, and Central Asia, very varied in their backgrounds, all have their own struggles. Still, there are the needs that do not wait, right? So these are the things that, irrespective in which context you are, these needs are there and they need to be met right away. Specifically speaking about the women, all this vulnerability aspects and determinants that I've mentioned, intersecting with gender-based violence, domestic violence, work conflicts, mobility. So number of us having this generational traumas we were living with, and now all these aspects are already done. And in this situation, it is really important to understand those needs, to deal with those traumas and build the solidarity movement within the nations, across the countries. And that's one thing we tried to be really committed to. And we use different tools. It was empowerment, women empowerment, movement building. It was leaders consulting and communication, feminist schools, supporting specific services, building referrals, friendly doctors. And what we did on top of that, and we're still doing, is using international, so including UN mechanisms, building this regional advocacy to bring the national benefits. So on one hand, it's totally a grassroots movement, but on the other hand, it's leaders coming from the grassroots movement advocating on higher platforms and advocacy platforms, including those big platforms for providing funding for HIV field and not only. So we've been there on the national level, on regional level, and it was not easy to deal with that, with all these challenges, but it still was manageable before very big Russia political influence started happening in Georgia. And that we're finding ourselves in the situation when civil society organizations, I mean, working in civil society organization or free media, or representing any type of the entity, international entity, trying to support local or national or regional initiatives by itself can be criminalized. So on the one hand, we were dealing with the communities that have been criminalized on many grounds on personal level, depending on the health status or the lifestyle. But now even the activism by itself can come under the criminalization. And there has been a number of the laws endorsed and already pushed into practice for last 2 years that directly affected working of the free media and civil society organizations. Basically putting the huge challenges for receiving and distributing, equally distributing the funds. One of the big examples, it's so-called Russian law because it was first in the region introduced in Russia in 2012, pushing practice in 2013. And the law by itself brought the concept of the international influence. And now any person, individual, or the entity, group, organization, officially registered, non-registered, if you get any type of the support, even the technical support from outside of the country, you would be officially identified as the entity of international influence. Moreover, on top of that, there was the grants law recently adopted, which requires all information about the organization, people enrolled in the organization, volunteers, staff, board members, even they can have access to the beneficiary privacy and confidential data in case of the need, not speaking about the financial part, which was, if you're asking, quite transparent by that time. And also additional law, which was called FARA, which is Foreign Agent Act. So yeah, it's like two laws with the same aim. Second one more strict, because if the authorities recognize you not providing enough information, even on the ground of that, any person affiliated with the organization can be identified as like eligible for imprisonment starting from 2 years. Max can be 6 years. So the first law was fines. The second one is direct imprisonment if need. And that started being somehow implementing already. Many organizations have been put restrictions on the funding use. And what I say the biggest is that not the field where you work, rather than how actively you are engaged in the protest actions against like the changes. Negative changes and like pushing the Georgian vector towards the Russia. And irrespective, we're not operating only in Georgia. The fact that itself that these funds were distributing and administrative stuff was done from Georgia, we had this huge backlash. And not only us, number of the regional organizations, feminist organizations had a huge backlash in terms of implementing their activities, contributing to the strategic directions, on benefiting the people we like serve. And the second thing is that it's also about like building resilience, but irrespective that push, I can't say that everything stopped. There still are initiatives happening, and basically it's happening at that moment on a voluntary base, or with the support of thinking out of box, even our supporters, including BEARR Trust Fund, understanding their needs, giving the support through different perspective, like fiscal agents not residing in Georgia, or giving this flexible support in terms of the technical one, at the same time hiring individuals for the local consultancies, which by itself is not safe, but it's less harm than for the organization. So what I'm trying to say, it's still all about sharing and speaking about these problems, raising awareness among different stakeholders. How can they help us? It's not money all the time. The fact itself that I have the possibility to speak about it nowadays, it's a big support already to letting people understand the context, because government might not be de facto government because they definitely stole our elections. They might not be like openly showing the focus right now, and this like alternative voice from the civil society is really important to be heard. Another problem, and the rethinking on the one hand problem, but maybe turning into opportunities, is like within this, you know, the move to try to isolate these entities and state them without any support. It like gives us more opportunity to build different types of networking systems. And within this networking systems, sometimes it's still about the safety nowadays. So maybe less of the visibility, but more of the actual work. So what I'm trying to say, in the good times, even the challenging times, many organizations tend to show whatever they did. I mean, they try to increase the visibility. They tried to build this networking national, like we work with all the institutions starting from the government, so whether the media, with the other civil society organizations. This, for the safety principle, there might be a lower visibility and more of a selective approach to whom you contact, to how you contact, what are the means, safer means, how you share this information safely. And that's something is also part of building resilience, and that might be interesting for others to take into account. And that might apply in different means. So organizations working in humanitarian crisis, war, conflict, whenever you need to be very careful about the personal or confidential information of every person you support, or every person that might be supporting you. And the third, which I really would like to focus on, is like how this influences the real influence. It's not the one that governments are trying to track and blame all the European influence, like the hidden part can really tackle again the most vulnerable communities. And who are they? Those who might be using drugs, those who live with HIV, those who belong to the LGBTQI communities. I mean, being young and like being a woman in Georgia by itself can be a determinant for intersectional stigma, or behaving outside of the box. So this gender normative approach might be used as a huge propaganda to demonize the organizations who work there and who demonize their supporters, I mean, including the BEARR Trust Fund. So we might be very careful and aware of that part, and we need to have our proactive agenda in building our narrative. And this is really important to do. And us to understand when it comes to the resources, if we compare our resources and their resources, it's a huge gap. So we should be very smartly using whatever resource we have to at least have this, the ray of light in this big propaganda the anti-gender movements are doing around, the globe. It's not only, as I said, Georgian case. We work in the whole region, Eastern Europe, Central Asia, and many of the similarities are there. Like, again, many of the countries introducing the law against LGBTQI propaganda. And if you ask them what's that, you don't even know, because they are the most speaking about this, not the community itself, because the communities have different issues. It's lack of housing, it's lack of access to food, it's lack of access to medical and legal services. And that's somehow the hidden agenda rather than, promoting. And that's also the Russian propaganda. We've seen it in Russia, Belarus, number of Central Asian countries affecting our work and, again, demonizing us as being somebody trying to totally abolish our national identities and bring some values from Europe, whom they sell to the population at large as the threat. And what I want to also say here is that these tendencies are noticeable even in Europe, in Eastern Europe, Central Europe this time. So many our partners are in the similar situations, and recently the way we communicated them, the way we built this networking and shared safely this information is also something really valuable. And sometimes it's, as I said, only speaking and them listening. There might be not much support coming, but it's also kind of therapeutic and building this, space where you can just say the things you're not able to express on a national level, or delegate the responsibility to safely speak about the issue which you can't say yourself from the safety perspective, is another tool that can be used. And now I was thinking, for such a backlash, my part was not about dealing with war, but due to all the respect and acknowledgement with our previous speakers' experiences coming from Abkhazia. I mean, international law still regards Abkhazia as part of Georgia, and we say that it's like the occupied territory, right? Again, with all the respect and acknowledgement of her self-identity and her personal experiences. And that's how, with the war and conflict, this influence in the region started. Now it changed the mode. They totally, how to say, entered the narrative in media, entered the supporters in the governmental sector, and tried to take over with all this, the big steps we did in democracy. And what was also shocking that and that's I don't want to sound threatening, but that's kind of warning to every country. Sometimes when we're fixed with some democratic achievements, we think it's like forever. Don't think that. I mean, we should stay very awake with all the changes, small changes that is alarming. We should build this solidarity and stay together, because whenever they are done with one community, they are moving to another, and it's like never ending. It's like a chain. And again, stay safe, staying alive. Don't underestimate the context of not being in a war, because one of my colleagues, by the way, she's also from Britain, was asking me, so Medea, tell me, when you say that some people are still like pro-Russian and the government is using this in many of the countries in our region, so what do they offer? What attraction should there be for a country to turn the vector from this development and democracy and improvement to stagnation and the backlash. And I said they offer nothing. They threat, and with big support to my Ukrainian colleagues, because I think that a big part of the decisions are made on their phone there. They say, okay, you know what was the message? Even I don't want to even repeat, but that was the message. So do you want to end up like Ukraine? Do you want war? If not, then just shift the vector. So yeah, they even are not trying to be nice or offer something. It's all about threatening, it's all about blackmailing, it's all about using this personal information, not against only the organizations, but people. It becomes that sensitive. And that's my vision of building the resilience to still keep this network going.
Yeah, could you finish soon?
Yes, the last sentence. So building this movement and networking going, understanding safety issues, and understanding maybe innovative approach of distribution resources, and be flexible towards the needs. So understanding that the organizations in the regions are not able to work in the same level administratively even that they used to. And thank you so much again for this opportunity. Pretty much valuable that just to listen and you're willing to support in these hard times.
Thank you very much, Medea. That was very, very enlightening. And now we're going to turn back to Ukraine. And Natalia Muzika, who is the head of the Association of Mothers and Wives of Ukraine's Defenders in Kiev, is going to tell us what her organization has been doing.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Hello, dear friends from BEARR Trust. My name is Natalia, and I'm the head of the Organization of Mothers and Wives of Ukraine's Defenders. For 11 years, our organization has stood beside families living through war, loss, uncertainty, and imaginable resilience. Today, I would like to share our experience, our challenges, and the strength that comes from partnership. I lead the organization that includes now over the 3,000 women who live every day between anxiety and hope. We don't just support each other, we are building a system that helps women from families of the missing, of the fallen, and active service military families. We support women by providing psychological help, legal humanitarian help, and organized support help with documents, procedures, and create local peer-to-peer groups that work directly with families of the missing and of the fallen and active service members. We also train women to coordinate services, lead community initiatives, and respond quickly to urgent needs in their regions. Our women leaders and activities have been staging strong for 11 years because we must, and because so many women are losing their relatives in this long war. We are got experience dealing with very complex challenges, and in many situations, for that women, no one else who can help with, just the women's like they, and so in this critical years, this challenging, I'm continue grateful to BEARR Trust that provides for many years support by enabling psychological helps, psychological assistance for our women leaders. This support is not just a service, it's essential for our survival, for our women's, for their resilience, and for our ability, like organization, to stay beside women who are living the hardest moment of their life. Then women leaders have strength, community have strength. And through such partnership, we can continue making the impossible possible. Through our partnerships, we gain our international voice, protection of rights, expertise, and resource for powerful help Ukrainians. We are women who cannot afford to stop. And together with our partners, we are building a peaceful future for our children. Our contribution to these partnerships is our real experience of living in war, everyday challenging and everyday uncertainty. It is the voice of women who hold the front line. We bring honesty, transparency, strong expertise in supporting military families and the ability to adapt quickly in constant danger. Our challenges are emotional burnout and the need to build resilience literally on the ruins. For our biggest challenge is finding the strength not only for to support ourselves, but also to support other women. It is something we struggle with every day, but also that makes us stronger. We understood that women who suffer through the war with every day, it's more and more and continue growing this women's. So the continue growing number of these women's. So these challenges became our lessons. Our biggest challenge is finding the strength not only to support us as women who struggle in this war, who suffering through the war, but also to support other women that the numbers continue to grow in. It is something we struggle with every day, but also that makes us stronger. And those challenges became our lesson. We learned to work quickly, to adapt, and to plan our activities in a flexible way. We learned to unite communities, friends through women leaderships, and create programs that work here and now. This experience is our contribution to the global ecosystem of support. It makes our partnerships real, active, and truly supportive for both sides. Ukraine lives through war and constant uncertainty, and that's why the strength of organization and partnerships is our key to the future. Together, we are building a space where growth, development, and create for people remain possible even in the hardest times. Through cooperation with our partners, we receive not just support, we build stability, bring our expertise, and give a hope for better and peaceful time for Ukrainians. And thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Natalia. I'm sure we will come back in the question time to find out a little bit more about your partnerships and so on. And now we will turn to Kyrgyzstan, where we have Miriam Osmonalieva from Oasis in Bishkek. Welcome, Miriam. I know it's a lot later where you are, but I hope you've had some lunch. And we look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I'm so happy to participate in this event. I just want to say thank you and express my gratitude to BEARR Fund for giving me this opportunity to participate, and also for your consistent support of our organization Oasis, which has been working more than 20 years in the field of vulnerable at-risk youth protection. Particularly, we are working with survivors of exploitation, human trafficking, and gender-based violence. And we provide holistic support. We do have our Oasis Center, which is serving as a referral center to provide direct assistance. And also we do have a huge program in terms of advocacy and research, where we also try to cooperate with state agencies, in particular Ministry of Labor, Social Protection and Migration, and Ministry of Internal Affairs, and so on. And today, I just want to highlight, I express my solidarity with all colleagues from Ukraine, we are with you, and we share your, worries. So every time we are watching the news, we are always, our hearts are with you. And I also want to express my solidarity also with my colleagues from Georgia, because we are facing the same issues, we are facing the same trend. As far as, regarding Kyrgyzstan, I just want to also highlight that we are going the same procedures. In 2023, our government enacted a new law on foreign representatives, which, imposed a lot of administrative obstacles regarding increased audits, registration delays, public vilification, and also information control, including the spread of disinformation to discredit civil society organizations by labeling that we are kind of anti-national, foreign agents, foreign puppets. And what we are witnessing now, despite all these restrictions, civil society in Kyrgyzstan always, stands out in Central Asia for its resilience and ongoing contestation. Despite increasing state interference and pressures reflecting regional authoritarian trends, our organizations continue to operate, challenge policies, and leverage international partnerships. A level of agency largely absent in neighboring countries like Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, and we are also surrounded by China. So, and we were one time we were island of democracy in Central Asia. And what is happening now, yes, civil society space is shrinking, but at the same time, we feel this, solidarity and building network of organizations which are still existing, and we try to build resilience through legal advocacy and also building partnership with state institutions. For instance, OASIS in particular, we have been cooperating with Children's Ombudswoman and also Institute of Ombudsman to research our field in child protection, and also address gaps in expertise and the absence of data-driven solutions. So in different areas, like not only in children's rights, but also in women's rights, and in other fields also regarding crime, and also trafficking, exploitation. And we realized that these kind of allies, like building allies, for us, it's kind of protection from power abuse. But the only thing we need to build, kind of a new communication strategy, how we can, protect ourselves from these, political pressures. And as I highlighted before, we are dealing with everyday political harassment, and sometimes we need to choose our message. And also risk-sensitive framing of messaging is so important. How we can, for instance, leverage our connection with state agencies through evidence-based advocacy, not only like criticizing them as it was previously, but also try to engage them in our research activities so that we can mutually develop action plans, like national action plan. And as a great example, in 2024, OASIS provided a huge consultations and expertise for our government to develop a national plan for the implementation of children's rights. And this action plan was adopted by the Cabinet of Ministers, and also you can see in the website of Minister of Justice, where we allocated a lot of measures for protecting at-risk young people and also children against violence, exploitation, also how we can build great this interagency cooperation to you know, like prompt assistance, provide prompt assistance to victims, and also provide different kind of activities in preventing violence and so on. And also what we've also noticed that building coalitions matters, because Oasis, for instance, helped several crisis centers last year and this year to develop fundraising plan, because diversifying resources is so important. And this is also international trend, you know, because US government pulled out a lot of financial resources, and it impacted us also hugely, because our also anti-human trafficking program was sponsored by US Embassy, and we suffered a lot. And also our direct assistance program also suffered a lot in terms of shrinking funding. And now we are thinking how we can leverage crowdfunding platform. And this is how we are cooperating with business organizations, not only within Kyrgyzstan, but also try to build connections with organizations from the Global South, in particular from South Korea. And we are thinking about different kind of startups in terms of social, launching social entrepreneurship projects. So we are now in the process of developing 3 ideas in terms of ecotourism, providing consultations in financial sector and so on. And also I want to highlight about capacity building and expert consultations. We changed a lot in our inner policies so that we can adapt to these changes, because as my colleague from Georgia highlighted, we are under surveillance. And this year in 2025, our government adopted digital code, which means we also have to share a lot of data in terms of, you know, our employees and partners and beneficiaries. And this is how we are learning a lot from our colleagues from abroad and also within the country. So, so we are seeking expertise from international civil society organizations and also communication specialists, legal advisors. I think that this kind of external support will help us to refine some messaging or conduct risk assessment, you know, and align our campaign with like global recognized advocacy norms. So, so we are keen to learn from maybe Georgia or other countries which are also experiencing the same problems, issues. So yeah, building resilience of organizations hugely matters. We changed almost 80% of our inner policies with the involvement of auditors and also legal experts, so that we can protect ourselves and you know, from power abuse.
Thank you very much, Miriam. That was absolutely fascinating, and it's a lovely suggestion that you can learn from each other in other countries as well as your own. And this kind of solidarity would be excellent. But we've had some very varied topics covered in this session. And it's clear that the issues in Ukraine are somewhat different from those in Georgia and Kyrgyzstan. It strikes me that what Medea was describing implies pressure on 2 fronts: the foreign agents, the foreign funding aspect, and the issue of LGBT propaganda, a different kind of law. Whereas in Kyrgyzstan, although it strikes me as surprising that whereas Miriam said there's quite a lot of cooperation between Oasis and government agencies, at the same time, other parts of the government are harassing civil society, including her organization. So I'd like to just ask a little bit more information now from Medea, maybe, as to whether her organization has any partnership, any contact whatsoever with the authorities. Are there any civil servants and government departments dealing with health, for example, who are willing to interact with an organization like hers? If we could kick off with that, then we will, I am sure, get a lot of other questions. Please put all your questions online in the chat, or if you want to raise your hand, you can put your question yourself. If you can raise your electronic hand, you'll go to the front of the Zoom screen and we'll be able to see you and take your question. So could you deal with that issue, Medea?
Yeah, and I think, thank you for this question. And I think there was another one in the chat box that resonates to whatever you asked. It was about how can actually we work with any of the supporters when the government by itself is very suspicious of international involvement, and especially that might relate to also civil society organizations communicating with some part of their entities. There are different approaches, and as for us, it might be different for the other organizations in the same situation in the different countries might be different. It's all about different resilience strategies. If we speak about IAVNA, for now, the situation is the following, that we cover 14 countries, and there are the countries, part of them, 3, 4, that we do not have any connection with the governmental entities as far. So we just now work on the community level. Unfortunately, Georgia is little by little joining that list. But again, of course, we have our personal contact with some representatives in the same institutions we count on in terms of safety as well. But it's also their safety in some ways if we would be too much in touch through not open channels. So that's something to take into account. As for the influence, it's not all the time the government, so the attempt to influence on the government. So in some of the countries, still these international platforms do have impact on the national levels, but at some we just stick working directly with the community, with the safe routes and the roads as possible. And sometimes the strategy is that there might be still some of the contact, but not through the people that are specifically associated with the organization, because that can bring more harm rather than benefit, if I put myself clear at that point. So different level in different countries. With the countries with this very autocratic approach now, and with the total lack of democracy, we don't do these connections. And if it's done, with not the people who are somehow associated with us. And that can be only on the service level. It's not the advocacy level. Again, if I answered your question.
Thank you very much. Could I ask, I'll come to this room in a minute. Richard Hindle, would you like to put your question yourself? Can he be unmuted? Would you like to, or shall I read it?
Yes, fine, very happy to. To some degree, Medea began to answer that, I think, in the last comment, but it was really about the limits of what can be done in terms of widening the effects and getting messages across to governments who are suspicious of international involvement. And you know, on one hand, we've got wonderful examples of bottom-up activity. On the other, there's always a feeling that, can this be amplified? Can it be used as a wider message and communicated more effectively to government? And how can that be done when many governments are perhaps suspicious of something that could be seen to be stimulated from outside their country?
Maybe Miriam would like to come in on this. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, you know, I absolutely can resonate with my colleague from Georgia. Sometimes in authoritarian countries, it's impossible to build relationships with state agencies because they can be very kind of antagonistic and apprehensive, you know, like accepting some kind of messages, especially when you're working in the field of protecting the rights of LGBT plus Q and, you know, other vulnerable communities. As far as you know, regarding Kyrgyzstan, in Kyrgyzstan, we can criticize our system. We can conduct research. You know, we can collect sometimes data, and also to express a lot of discontent regarding what's going on. You know, in our field of child protection, women's rights. If everything in the context of human rights and general issues, we cannot criticize directly our, political authorities. We do have our president. We cannot criticize him. We cannot criticize the second person who is also in power. Except them, we have freedom in expressing our opinion. What I've noticed, the investigative journalism is under threat. We are witnessing a lot of, persecution towards journalists and activists, environmental activists, and a lot of them, they were placed in jail, and they are always under the surveillance. But at the same time, we are also witnessing the huge solidarity between, like civil rights activists, civil society organizations. It's kind of time when they started to think about that we need to be united, we need to be united. And as you know, Kyrgyzstan experienced a lot of revolutions, unrest, and we experienced everything, authoritarian regimes, parliamentarian regimes. And even this time, we have kind of flashback, we do have flashback. But what is a huge risk for me is a militarization of the power, and how this can affect maybe in the future how the civil society will have and preserve its own space in Kyrgyzstan if we disagree with the system.
Thank you. Other questions from the floor, from here? Please go ahead, Leonora.
Thank you. What incredibly interesting speeches. I was really struck particularly with what Miriam was saying, how much flexibility is needed in your approach to everything and your approach to having changed, you said 80% of your internal policies, to your approach to fundraising, to your approach to your work. And I wonder if perhaps everyone could comment on the relationship between that flexibility and resilience, because all of these societies are changing and there's different pressures coming from different areas, and how much flexibility you need in your mindset as leaders of the organizations and within your organizations.
Thank you for the question. Natalia, would you like to comment on anything in the real area of flexibility?
Так, якщо я можу, я переключуся на українську.
Well, with your permission, I will switch to Ukrainian. Well, if we speak about our organization, almost every year we live under such circumstances that we have to overhaul our system of financing 100%, because the circumstances keep changing all the time. If we had one set of partners last year, now we have a totally different mix of partners next year. Likewise, we are trying to cooperate with businesses. And this year and last year, we put more of a focus on national and local businesses, and we ran a lot of joint projects with them. But before 2022, the tendency had been totally different. We primarily oriented ourselves towards international donor organizations, and the war made all the difference. If we speak about models of funding, we introduced membership fees as of this year, because we've come to realize that we have some internal needs which we have to cover. They're not huge, but membership fee revenues would come in very handy here. Another point is that to say that we have a large organization and there are a lot of women involved, and now we want to orient ourselves towards so-called socially responsible entrepreneurship, and we are trying to engage AI, and we empower our women with skills as to how to use AI in their work. This is a model of socially oriented entrepreneurship, when our organization can be useful for others and train others, and to do this with the use of charitable donations from outside and not just from our members.
Could I just follow on from that with a supplementary question? Could you give some examples of how you use AI in social entrepreneurship?
Ну, дивіться, по-перше, штучний інтелект наразі дуже допомагає.
Well, first of all, AI is very helpful as we develop marketing materials. We don't have to pay through the nose for that. We can do this with the use of existing instruments. We can come up with excellent video materials or designer materials with the use of AI, and we can economize on the use of external designers or developers. This is a very efficient way to economize. When I spoke about courses or trainings, we have kind of trainings for our people where we give basic training on how to use AI. And when people come to those courses, they make voluntary donations, which we use for the purposes of our organization. So the bottom line is that we are mutually beneficial with our beneficiaries. We provide them with knowledge, we provide them with new skills, and they support us financially by their voluntary donations. Among our women, there are women who have technical background. They can train others, and at the same time, they can leverage their voluntary donations for the work of our organization.
Thank you. That sounds very inspiring. Medea, do you have any sense that there's any flexibility in fundraising if you are now not able to receive funds from abroad so easily?
As far as I understood the question, it was not only about the fundraising, right? It was generally the flexibility of how we interact with the entities we're used to. And again, question, so is it about like having it the way it was done, how we amplify, we can just restrain whatever we did? And again, it's such a deep question, honestly. And here, yeah, I could say that we're flexible as an organization, but when I just think about my personal emotions, it's so hard whenever, you know, yeah, when it comes to the others, you just know people need to get services, and somehow you still need to engage in this referral and redirect them and give the directions, and even sometimes ask for the support for this service provision level chain representatives. But when it comes to advocacy, I couldn't have imagined the situation where they could compromise with the decriminalization of some parts of the law. But does it make sense in the whole picture right now? For some countries, I'm not speaking about everyone. So honestly, personal level, I do not see, and with some of the countries, and I can speak about Georgia at the moment, I do not see any space of the coordination at the moment. No means of applying any good results, because the worst part of it is that some of the people from the side, they're used to work for the NGOs. So they know the system pretty well. So they perfectly understand what benefit it brought to people in many ways. And they were part of some of the, progressive reforms in the country. And now just they totally changed the position, which I know doesn't happen in a day, just because of maybe the money interest or the threats or the blackmailing, whoever knows, different stories. Yes, with some of the countries, no, with some, again, with some situations. And understanding we're not judging anyone who still has this flexibility or maybe not that vocal about the protest regarding keeping whatever is needed for their communities right away at that moment. And if I have time, just a small remark, how some of the things could be used against us in the long run. When we used to work with the government on securing the funding for the national state subsidized HIV and harm reduction programs, the whole idea was not to provide it through the civil society and community-led organizations only, rather than integrate this within the state-run system. And now when they hand over around the system and they have direct access to the community, about sensitized information of the private information, which is very sensitive in terms of criminalization and stigma, they are very much vulnerable now. That's what I want to also say. So yeah, do not have answers. I just like bringing some problems, but be cautious and even be flexible of some people not being flexible and cut off the ties. That's something that I can tell you from country to country. That's the context.
Are there any questions? There's a question from Megan. Microphone needed.
Yeah.
I was wondering if any of the speakers have a positive experience with monitoring and evaluation, helping them develop their organisational strengths, because sometimes it can be useful having an external view looking at your organisation. Sadly, I found that many very busy organisations, which I can see that you are, say, oh, we don't really have much time for monitoring and evaluation. And one of the key things is it's monitoring, evaluation and learning, and bringing in the results from the evaluation to sort of change just slightly the way you work. So I just wondered if any of you have done an organisational self-assessment or had external evaluators helping you to look at yourselves and how you could perhaps run your organisation a little bit more smoothly, or what additional skills you need. Thank you.
Would anybody like to talk? Ah, yes, Natalia, please go ahead.
As an organization, we have existed for 11 years already, and the understanding that we have to assess ourselves is obvious. This understanding came to us some 2 years ago. For the first time, we ran a big survey among our women as to their opinion about our services and the efficiency of our organization. And honestly speaking, we had very, very varied views as to how we understand each other, how we assess our organization. The range of assessments was really varied. Over the last 2 years, we've been running constant surveys among the women who are our beneficiaries and our members as to what they want to be improved in the work of our organization and so on. So we do practice self-assessment in terms of the assessment of the vision of our organization by our beneficiaries. So we use both the internal assessment and assessment by our beneficiaries. We collate those data, and this helped us to develop over the last 2 years. And over the last 2 years, we have developed more than we had developed over the previous 9 years or so.
That's very interesting. Do either of our other speakers want to come in on this?
I can also share our experience from Oasis. You know, we run 4 programs, like sustainable programs. We try to incorporate all our projects within the programs, like direct assistance or advocacy or research. Besides, like conducting monitoring and evaluation within these programs and projects, like asking our beneficiaries, I think what we've done, we invited external auditors, both financial and legal auditors, so that they can assess whole our operational work and also financial capacity of our organization. Why we needed it, as I highlighted before, because legislation is changing in Kyrgyzstan, and to build resilience, even without this legislation, what we are witnessing around the world is shrinking funding for our operational work of civil society organizations. And we are witnessing how UN agencies are suffering, how other organizations, big organizations, are also suffering. What we've noticed that these kind of external auditors usually see what we do not see. You know, they notice what we not notice, or sometimes we feel that we are genius and they can show our loopholes, saying that here you have a huge threat. And this is how we were able to change thoroughly, I would say, our strategic documents. And also we developed a new development strategy for 3 years because of them, with very detailed actions. Maybe later on I can also share with BEARR Fund, so that you can also see what kind of activities we allocated. But also, you know, we included how we will do our advocacy campaign in terms of, you know, I recently was in Pakistan. You know, Pakistan is very kind of authoritarian country with militarization of power. And what I've noticed, you know, we are sharing the same worries. You know, the government is against child violence, against violence against children and trafficking. Our government is also against violence against children and women. They want improve their policies, and they are also seeking allies. And this is how we can find maybe allies, not only in among our donors, but also from state agencies for mutual action. So that we can build this kind of a bit shield against power abuse, saying that we are contributing to our communities, we are contributing to our societies, we are working for, you know, like for children of our country. You can say this, but anyway, it helps a lot. So not monitoring your impact of your projects, but also looking at your core values of your organization and what we are doing and where are you going, with a lot of changes and challenges happening around the world.
Thank you, Miriam. Medea, a couple of minutes before we have to.
Of course, monitoring, evaluation, learning is something pretty much essential of every organization. At least the attempt of it. Otherwise, you can't improve your performance. But What I've observed now and at our team is that it only makes sense if the other parts, I mean the stakeholders, acknowledge the work and your contribution, and they are interested in this contribution. Right now, not the space all the time. So I totally agree that it's now we are in the period when we rethink monitoring and evaluation and learning viewpoint from the impact to the society, shifting back to the resilience. So we proved to be contributive, but it was not acknowledged, even it was like somehow used against us, contributing to the human rights of specific individuals and community groups. And now we are trying to push a bit back and rethink how this knowledge would help us stay resilient and still be contributive to the communities. If I put myself clear, so this concept itself changed the score. Sometimes we need to understand why we do it. And if no one's acknowledging this impact, you need to do it differently in a way.
Thank you, Medea. I think we're going to break now. There's a short break, is there, for 10 minutes? Well, thank you to all of our speakers. I'm sorry you weren't in the room with us, but we can say that we have met Natalia, who attended our conference last year, and we have met Miriam, who visited us not so long ago in London. And we hope to be able to meet at some point as many as possible of other participants in this conference. Thank you all very much.